Yo, how's it going? It's your boy ChiefsRaysBolts alongside A'sRaidersDubsSharks as per usual. It's been like 2 months, but we're back. We're back in action, and it's
Yep.
time to talk some hockey because it is that time of year again where the NHL playoffs are underway. And we missed the first couple of games, but we're getting in as early as we can, and here we go.
Yep. Definitely excited. My team has never been in it when we've done these videos, but
It's
I
coming
mean, I'm
soon.
still, yeah, someday it'll come, and I'm excited to talk. We have some really good matchups here, and especially some like kind of rivalries going on. I mean, I'd consider LA and Oilers kind of a little rivalry, of course, a divisional, and then of course last year playing. So just preview what's to come. You have regional rivalries like New York Rangers playing New Jersey. It's a great playoff year, honestly.
Yeah, it is. We have, for the first time in I want to say 16 years, the playoffs without the Penguins and Capitals at once. So
Yeah.
it's there's some big name teams that have been out of it for the first time. I know the Penguins alone have like a 16-year playoff streak, which is just incredible in its own. But it's definitely different to see some new teams in it. We have Seattle for the first time. We have Dallas and Minnesota making their return to the playoffs. We have the Jets making their return to the playoffs. The LA coming back, and we have the Islanders getting back in the playoffs after an off year, and then the Jersey Devils back in the playoffs. So it's a lot of young teams back in the playoffs. And then you have obviously the powerhouse of this year's NHL season, the Boston Bruins, setting an all-time record for most points in a season. And they had their game yesterday, their game one against Florida, and it appears that they will not pull a 2019 Lightning where they get swept in the first round after winning the President's Trophy, which was unfortunate. I was kind of hoping to see it. I think a lot of people were hoping to see it, but it's not going to happen. But at least it was slightly competitive, only a 3-1 final. Let's just go ahead and get into that game first, shall we? It's Boston and Florida. How do we feel about the President's Trophy winners this year, Casey?
I mean, like you said, they're a powerhouse team. I honestly, they're my pick to win the Stanley Cup. I know we're not there yet necessarily, but I mean, yeah, it's crazy just to see a team like this that is setting records and also just starting off the season so well. David Pasternak has been crazy. I mean, I think he had 61 goals this year. Also, their goaltending is just great. I mean, Linus Olmark, crazy. It was a good win for them, and from the defensive standpoint. I didn't really see any flaws with the Bruins. I mean, they allowed one goal. I think they're gonna either sweep or win in five. I mean, it's definitely a team, the team to beat, right? And Florida, obviously a team that had a rocky season to say the least after coming off a couple of great ones. So yeah, I mean, I don't really hesitate when picking the Bruins to win it. Linus Olmark has been great in net. And the Panthers are a team I could see upsetting someone, but I don't think they would upset Boston. I see Boston as, like I said, the team to beat. And yeah, David Pastrnak really impresses me. So does Omar, and really their whole team. I mean, their defense, their offense, they're just an overall great team.
Yeah, and you're totally right. The Boston Bruins on paper should win the Stanley Cup with ease this year, but the Lightning also should have won with ease or was it 4 years ago now? I believe it was 2019,
Yeah.
and it just didn't happen. So as a Lightning fan, because I had to witness that, I'm not really big into superstition and believing in curses and whatnot because they all get broken at some point, but the President's Trophy curse, man, I believe it. I really do, especially after what happened in 2019, witnessing it firsthand after a dominant regular season. The
Yeah.
last time a team won the President's Trophy and the Cup the same year was the 2013 Blackhawks, but there is arguably an asterisk on that asterisk on that because it was a shortened season. So if you want to go
Yep.
back to when you played a full season, you had the President's Trophy winner winning the Stanley Cup at the same time. It was the 2007-2008 Detroit Red Wings. So it's been well over a decade, like nearly 2 decades since a team playing a full season has won the President's Trophy and the Stanley Cup. So obviously that will eventually get broken at some point. Is it this year though? I don't know, because as far as recent trends have gone, it kind of seems like it's not going to happen, especially considering the fact that in 2013-14 Boston won the President's Trophy, went out in the second round. Same thing in 2020. They won the President's Trophy. Again, there's an asterisk on that because of obviously you had like a 5 month gap in between the pause of the regular season, COVID hitting, and then starting the playoffs. But still, the Bruins did have the most points at the time of the pause, and they were well on track to winning the President's Trophy regardless. They also went out in the second round that year. So in the last decade, Boston has had 2 President's Trophies. This is their third. The last 2 times they've gone out in the second round. Will it happen again? I think it's going to happen. But, as far as this series goes, I think, Boston will win. But I think Florida will put up a little bit more of a fight than people are expecting them to.
Yeah, I definitely could see that happening. I just think, I didn't know about that history. That's pretty interesting to think about. I think with Boston, part of me sort of believes that. Part of me thinks, this team is different. This team is special. I guess we'll just have to see. I think Florida, they could put up a fight. I'm not going to doubt them. They've been a good team consistently. They were the President's Trophy winners, what, a year ago, 2 years ago, something like that.
Panthers won the President's Trophy last year, yeah.
And so, they know what it takes to win a lot of games. But like I said, I think Boston, the atmosphere there, and they're just a great team all around. It's hard to doubt them. But like I said, like you said, actually, it's definitely one of those things where history is not on their side with that President's Trophy.
No, not at all. But regardless of the history, I have Boston winning over Florida in the first round, probably in 6.
Yeah, I'm going to take Boston in 5, but I definitely agree.
It's fair. All right, well, let's move on to the western side of the bracket. We have the Avalanche and the Kraken. The Kraken, in their second year ever, making the playoffs and making it pretty convincingly. How do you feel about the Kraken going up against the reigning Stanley Cup champions?
Well, like you said, they're one of those teams that it's like, you could make the argument they don't have much experience because they're a new team, but they have a lot of established NHL players on their roster. Grubauer and net has been good. They have a good tandem. They've just been a really solid team all year round. Matty Beniers has been stellar. Great pick by them. They're a team that has really kind of silenced all the doubters. I mean, that's a very obvious statement coming from the fact that they were one of the worst teams, if not the worst, in the NHL last year.
Right.
But they're a team that has the capability to do a lot of damage. They had a tough schedule this year, a tough division, playing in a division that had them making the playoffs, Vegas, Oilers, and the LA Kings. So, the Pacific, very competitive this year. I think they, put them in a different division, they might have won it. I as a Sharks fan, they're technically our rival. I'm not necessarily rooting for them, but I do congratulate them on a great season, especially coming off a rough one, coming out of the gate, coming into an expansion year. But I think, with them playing Colorado, I like this matchup from a competitive standpoint. I mean, Colorado, reigning Stanley Cup champs, they definitely have experience. But, you really can't doubt the experience of some of the Kraken players. They have Grubauer. They have, players that have experience and young guys that are hungry for, to make, moments and experience like Matty Beniers, like I said. But, I think this could be, technically an upset based on the seeding where the Kraken win. I mean, I think the Avalanche have a leg up having, some of the best players in all of the NHL, Nathan McKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, record-breaking players. But, I really, and Georgiev and net too has been great. But I think the tandem for Seattle of Philip Grubauer and Martin Jones has been, some rocky playing, but I think Grubauer, he looked really good in game 1. And so I like Seattle, but their depth and their scoring ability has been really good all year. So we'll see.
And it's really interesting this season. To me, it just seems like this has been a rare occasion where not many playoff series matchups were set until the last day of the regular season. I think it was up until game 81. It was only the Lightning and Maple Leafs that had been the only confirmed matchup in the playoffs because every other team in the playoff race was so close point-wise. You look at the Colorado Avalanche this year. They won their division while the Kraken were a wild card team. But you look at the point difference, Colorado only finished with 9 more points than the Kraken did, which is not a crazy large margin in this sport. So a couple of games at hand, maybe like 5 or 6 game difference. So really, the Kraken could really put up a fight here against the Avalanche. The Avalanche do finish with 10 less points than they did last year when they did win the Cup. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. I have the Kraken winning this series. I'm going to go ahead and say either 6 or 7. For a definitive answer, I'll say 6. But I think the Kraken could shock a lot of people with this series win.
I definitely agree. I mean, I'm gonna pick the Avalanche just because I feel like it's a safer bet. Now, I don't think the safer bet is always the right bet, but I'm just gonna pick the Avs in 7. Like you said, though, I mean, these teams are very close in terms, not in terms of seeding because that's just the way it worked, but I mean, I think Seattle is a team that could make potentially a cup run in the next couple of years. I think maybe this year is
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily their year, but I
Agreed.
think I could see them beating the Avalanche. I'm just gonna pick the Avs in 7. I can't really doubt the reigning Cup champs in round 1, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. Like you said, I totally respect that pick, and like you said, it's the goal. The goaltending is going to really be the difference in this game. You have Georgiev, you have Grubauer. I mean, who's going to play better? I think the Avs maybe have the edge on that one, and we'll have to see. Because Seattle, young team, in terms of expansion, and also like one of their best players, Ben Yers is literally like a rookie, right? So like they have to just kind of rise to the occasion and just figure things out. And I think they can do it, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and keep notes here because in case nobody knew already, I had a perfect bracket in the NFL playoffs this year, so I gotta keep the receipts here in case I do somehow manage to have a good record again this year. So in round 1 so far, you said um, Seattle. No, you said Avalanche over Seattle. Yeah.
Avalanche and Boston.
Okay, and then you had yeah, okay. Boston over FL. Okay, so moving back over to the eastern side of the bracket, we have the Maple Leafs and the Lightning, and there's a lot of buzz about this playoff series. Casey, I'll let you go ahead and speak your mind first because I'm going to go on a pretty lengthy, detailed conversation about my Bolts here.
For sure. I mean, yeah, I think this is a series, like you said, not only getting a lot of buzz, but it's a rematch. It's going to get similar to that Oilers LA series we're going to talk about in a moment. I mean, it's a rematch series of last year, right? It was a close series last year, and I think we're talking about history, like with the Boston and Florida series. I mean, history says the Maple Leafs don't make it out of round 1. Of course, they're a very solid team this year, a very good team. Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, you know, have been on a tear this year. Very good season for the Leafs. I think an even better season than last year. Um, but it's one of those things where, like I said, it's experience. The Bolts are a Stanley Cup dynasty at this point, whereas the Maple Leafs definitely, have had their ups and downs. Majority downs over the past couple of years, past decade. But I think the dynamic duo of Austin Matthews and Marner is convincing. But when you're a team that has Steven Stamkos, Hedman, Vasilevsky, they're all playing at a good level, especially in the playoffs. I know the regular season's important, right? But once you get to the playoffs, it's 7 games, right? And I think when it comes down to 7 games, minimum 4, I'm taking the team that has loads of experience. And I mean, you tell me those top 3: Steven Stamkos, Hedman, Vasilevsky. There's many more you can name. I mean, that Lightning team, yes, like I know they've had ups and downs, as you probably have been frustrated on, but I'm taking the Lightning in this series. I'll just say that.
Love it.
I think it's going to be a close one like last year. Last year was very close, and I think the Leafs, so much respect for them. They're a great team. I mean, like I said, Austin Matthews, one of the best in the NHL, if not the best. But I think it's one of those things where it's like, am I going to pick the team that hasn't made the second round since 2004, or a team that's been in the Stanley Cup, 3 years in a row or whatever? So I got the Lightning not just because of experience, but I think they just play better in the playoffs than the Leafs do, obviously, and I think
Yeah.
that they are going to. And it's hard because I know, like you said, they've dealt with a lot of things this year. The Lightning, divisional games that have been tough, defensive struggles, and obviously Vasilevsky, he's a great player. He's one of the best goaltenders in the NHL, but obviously he can't perform every night to the expectations the fans have. So I still got the Lightning. I mean, I think it's going to be in 7 or 6. Definitive answer, I'll go 7, but I mean, yeah, it's one of those things where it's experience, and it's also, I feel like the Lightning have to like this matchup given they've seen them last year, even though it is a tough matchup. I mean, you're playing 2 great players, and then of course a roster full of stacked players in the Leafs. So
Yeah, so here's the thing. I'm going to keep this short because most people watching this video are here to watch NHL in general, not a full-pledged rant of a Lightning fan on the Lightning, right? But here's what I'll say. The Lightning had a really solid first half of the season leading up to the All-Star break. Ever since the All-Star break, they have been just... I'm putting this lightly, okay? Dog shit. They've been terrible, especially defensively, and I think it's primarily in the hands of Victor Hedman having an off year. He got demoted to a lower line in place of Sergachev, which says all you need to know, because I don't like Sergachev. I've never liked Sergachev. The Lightning organization loves him to death, and I just can't understand why. They see him as a two-way player that can only get better throughout his career. The problem with him is that he's primarily a defenseman, right? But he tries way too hard to be a forward, and he tries way too hard to be a hero and score all the goals, and it never works, and it leads to turnovers, it leads to sloppy passing, and it doesn't ever end well. And so for that reason, I have always been confused on why the Lightning organization is so just hell-bent on Mikhail Sergachev. I don't get it. I don't think he's good. I don't think he's proven himself. I don't think he was worthy of that major extension the Lightning just gave him in the offseason. And so that really, love our general manager, Julien Brisebois, but that signing, that extension of Sergachev, I really cannot understand at all. He's been arguably, like I said, one of the primary reasons as to why the Lightning defense has been putrid over the course of the second half of the season. And this isn't like a traditional Lightning, like, oh, they'll go through a skid and then they'll rebound. No, ever since the All-Star break, they have been weak. They haven't gone through any strong periods of games. There's been maybe two or three game winning streaks here and there, but it's followed by a bunch of losing streaks. And I just don't get it. I don't get it. And after tonight's performance, a 7-3 final over the Maple Leafs, I'm starting to think John Cooper, the head coach, told the team to purposefully look like shit, so that way when you get to the playoffs, everybody takes you, not seriously, and then that's the art of deception, baby. You know what I'm saying? But no, I'm still very skeptical of the Lightning, despite their 7-3 win. I think the Leafs got better this year, especially when you consider the fact that they went out and got pieces like Ryan O'Reilly at the trade deadline. And then I think, on the other hand, the Lightning got worse. I really think that, because you go in and you get rid of arguably your best defenseman, Ryan McDonough. You trade him to the Predators, and you can't afford him because you'd rather give that money to Mikhail Sergachev, a young player who hasn't proven himself. And then at the deadline, you go and trade your future picks for Tanner Jeannot, who hasn't even really proved himself either. He's just a guy who loves to fight, and he doesn't really light up the scoreboard at all. What he's not supposed to, he's not really that guy. It was like a well-known thing, but as far as his play goes, he's been underperforming for what the Lightning gave up to him. It was a major overpay, in my opinion. So here's the bottom line. The Maple Leafs arguably should have beaten the Lightning last year. There were a couple games that came down to the wire and that the Leafs probably should have won. The Leafs realistically should have won last year's series in 6. Yet they let it go to 7, and they let the Lightning break their hearts. The way I see it is the Maple Leafs got better, the Lightning got worse since that series. And on paper, dude, the Maple Leafs should win this series in 5. But they're already down 1. Their defense gave up 7 in the first game, and that is alarming to the Leafs. And it's especially confusing because the Lightning and Leafs just played each other in Tampa last week and beat Tampa despite starting Matthews and I think it was Tavares. They benched a lot of starters because, you're already locked into your spot. What's the point of playing them to risk injury and all that stuff, right? The Lightning, on the other hand, really didn't. So they still lost to the Maple Leafs, despite the Maple Leafs benching a couple of really key starters. maybe it's true. Playoffs are a whole new season, and it's just I'm really dumbfounded by how the Lightning not only won but dominated this first game against Toronto, despite the fact that on paper Toronto probably should win this in five. Um, End of rant. I still think the Maple Leafs on paper should win this series, and it's really ballsy as a Lightning fan for me to say, hey, the Lightning are going to lose this series because it's hard to bet against a team that just made 3 straight cups, won 2 of them. And on top of that, if the Lightning do beat the Leafs in the series, I look like a dumbass. I look like a prick for betting against my own team. But, I got to stick to my gut in that the Lightning haven't played good defensively in the second half of the season. I think the Maple Leafs will still win this series.
Definitely. I mean, we'll have to see what happens. I think, like you said, there's a lot of questions surrounding this series, given the fact that last year was so close, and the fact, like you said, that both teams have changed with the additions and losses. So we'll have to see. But I mean, whatever happens, it's going to be history in the making if Toronto can win, a first round series for the first time in almost 20 years. So we'll have to see.
So I mean, I don't want to be the team that lets Toronto win their first round match in 16 years or something like that. Anyways, moving on to the West Side, we have Dallas and Minnesota, which is one of those series that I probably am not qualified to talk about because I have not paid attention to either of these teams all year. I don't know who has the upper hand, but we'll hear your take on it first.
Well, I mean, coming out the gate, I think I like this matchup. Like I like both teams here. Central Division. Minnesota is a great team. I mean, that I respect them a lot. But I think the issue with Minnesota is the lack of variety from their goal scoring. I mean, Matt Boldy and Kirill Kaprizov is the two that come into mind for me is just like the alpha males on that team in terms of goal scoring. Other than that, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's like where are they going to produce those goals from if they can't get goal scoring other than those guys? And I like their goaltending tandem as well. I just don't think it's as strong as Dallas's. They have Gustafsson and Marc-Andre Fleury. I'm sure Gustafsson in this series will get a lot more reps because he's the better goaltender right now, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, I think for Dallas, I mean, they're a star-studded team. They very well could have won the Central Division. They were only back of the Avalanche by 1 point to end the year. I mean, they have Jason Robertson, who's one of the best players in the NHL right now. They have Jamie Benn, who kind of bounced back from not being as good as he used to be, and then of course Miro Heiskanen, and then in net, I mean Jake Ottinger, who was a hero in the playoffs kind of last year. Yeah, great player. And so I feel like the Stars are overall a much better team. I mean, these two teams were separated by 5 points in the same division. Not too familiar with the head-to-head matchups this year, but I don't think that really matters at this point in the year, given the fact that a lot has changed, especially with the production of Jamie Benn getting better. So I think, for the Stars, I see them winning in 5. I think it's going to be a pretty easy matchup for the Stars. I know both teams are good. I like both teams in this matchup going up against each other in a Central Division showdown. But, I mean, to be real with you, I like the Wild. I don't think they're there yet. They need to add a couple more pieces, a couple more goal scorers. I don't really see where the goals are going to come from and the defense other than Kaprizov and Boldy. So that's kind of my take on it. I do think, though, Dallas definitely has an edge in the goaltending, too. Ottinger's great. I mean, if he gets tired, we'll see what happens. I like the tandem that the Wild have, but to me, it's just not as strong. So we'll see. I have the Stars in 5.
Dude, Dallas's goalie Onger is insane in the playoffs. I don't know what it is. You never hear his name in the regular season. They just flips the switch in the playoffs. I think it was last year he had some 67 saves in a playoff loss, which is like can't even be mad at the guy when you're stopping that many pucks. But it was yesterday's game, Minnesota winning that in 2 overtimes over Dallas. It was bound to happen. I think Minnesota just had the upper hand in that game, and they just looked like the better team over Dallas a lot of the game. I feel like, because I was watching a lot of it, and it's really hard to say because these two teams are so closely contested. They finished the season within 5 points of each other. Dallas had 108, Wild had 103, so it was a very close margin. That being said, I don't follow either of these two teams usually throughout the regular season, so the fact that they're playing each other, I'm probably not qualified to give an accurate prediction. There's a reason I'm not working as an ESPN commentator or whatnot, But as a YouTuber who has the independent freedom of being able to make these videos because I can, I will say that as based on the game I saw yesterday, I think the Wild probably have the upper hand, but I think it will go 7.
See, I definitely could see that happening. I just think for me, I mean, that game one to me was a surprise because, like you said, it's like you asked me this like who wins a few days ago, I would probably say Stars and 4, Stars and 5, and I'm still gonna go Stars and 5. I think they're gonna bounce back.
That's
Maybe
ballsy
6.
though, because then they got to win 4 straight, and yesterday was a closely contested game, so it's kind of surprising to hear that prediction.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. I mean, we'll have to see. I just think like I just can't. I mean, I definitely know the Stars are gonna win. I just don't know how many games, given the fact that, like you said, it's so close contested. Kind of reminds me of some of these other series where it's just like so close, it's hard to tell. But like you said, I feel like sort of against my prediction, like you cannot only look at the what's on paper, because I feel like on paper the Stars are a much better team just given the firepower. But I mean, yeah, you got to give it to Minnesota for the game one 3-2 finish. I mean, yeah, they were scrappy in that game, so we'll see. I got Dallas though. We'll see what happens though.
We'll move back, shift over to the Eastern Conference. We have the Hurricanes and the Islanders. The Islanders back in the playoffs after a 1-year skid. The Islanders get one of those last, if not the last, wild card spot. I don't really remember. No, it was the second to last wild card spot right in front of Florida. But they fought till the very end with Florida and Pittsburgh for that wild card spot. They snuck into the playoffs, and now they're here. They're down 1-0 in their series to the Hurricanes, and I'm gonna give a little spoiler alert. I think it's gonna be more of the same throughout the rest of the series. I have Carolina winning this one.
So do I. Yeah, I mean the Hurricanes, very scrappy team, had a great season. I mean, obviously Max Pacioretty, and he tears his Achilles, and
Yeah.
Grace Svechnikov was gone, and they're a great team despite the adversity, and I feel like that's what's going to motivate them this year. I don't know if I have them all the way in the Stanley Cup, but I mean they're definitely making it out of round one, like you said. I mean New York, they're a team on the rise. Matthew Barzal has been pretty good. I mean he's been hurt too, so we'll see how he plays in this series. I mean I could see the Islanders stealing a game or two. But honestly, I got the Hurricanes. Ilya Sorokin, have a lot of respect for him. He's been a strong guy in the pipes, and obviously historically in the playoffs over his career, he's been great in the playoffs. But I feel like for Carolina, they remind me of Dallas in a way that they've been scrappy. They faced adversity and they have playoff experience. And even without Svechnikov and Pacioretty, I mean, it's definitely a team that you don't want to be facing. So I honestly I have them. Give it to me in 5. Hurricanes in 5.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I think the Hurricanes just have the upper hand on New York this time around. I think the Hurricanes are just one of those teams that's been lurking for a Stanley Cup appearance and just always runs into the best team every year. So they've just been getting kind of unlucky in that sense. But I think their time is coming up soon. So the Hurricanes will definitely, in my opinion, be a team to watch for a Stanley Cup contender this year. And I definitely have them winning over the New York Islanders in the first round.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty safe bet given the fact that these two teams are kind of on different ends of the spectrum.
Definitely. We're going to move back over to the West. We have the Vegas Golden Knights and the Winnipeg Jets. The Jets barely sneaking by with a wild card appearance. How do we feel?
It's strange because game one they win 5-1 over Vegas in Vegas. Had a great game, scoring 3 in the third, 2 in the second. I mean, definitely a shocker to me. Vegas, probably I would have them as a pick coming out of the West in the Stanley Cup. I mean, we'll see what happens with that. I'm not going to make that prediction yet, but they're a great team. 111 points, I think. And that game one finish, though, very surprising. I mean, honestly, I could have had them sweeping. I could have had them in 5, but I don't know. I mean, losing 5-1, their goaltending tandem is pretty good. Logan Thompson, and of course, they had Brossoit in net, and then of course adding Jonathan Quick. So I mean, they have good goalies, but Hellebuck is an insane goaltender. I'd say he's probably in the top 5, and I wouldn't doubt the Jets necessarily. But like you said, I mean, they barely snuck in. They're playing a team that not only has a good, goaltending tandem, but has like Mark Stone and Jack Eichel and Alex Petrangelo and Kolasar and like a ton of good players. I mean, I've followed the Knights given the fact that they're a Pacific rival, and I mean they're a very very good team. Um, they lose games that they should win, and I think that's their weakness. It's been their weakness ever since they've entered the league. But honestly, I got the Knights winning in 6. I know they lost this first game pretty badly, but I don't see them losing like this again. I mean, the Knights are a very good team. I think this game also could be deceiving, given the fact that they didn't have Logan Thompson in net. I think he's their number one guy. In my opinion, I know that could be debated, but honestly, I think the experience the Knights have, not just as a team because they're a newer team, but their players. Mark Stone is a great guy in the playoffs to have, and we'll see though. I mean, I see the Jets maybe winning a few. They're also a good team. Pierre-Luc Dubois looked good in Game 1. They had Blake Wheeler look really good in Game 1, so we'll see. But I got Vegas in 6. I don't see them going down in round 1. I mean, it could happen. Similar to past years where those great teams have gone down in the first round, but yeah, and they're a good team. I believe they had the best record in the West, right?
Yeah, I believe so. They had 111 points. Yep, the best.
Yeah.
So they were number one in the West, and they had their ups and downs, but ultimately they finished with the most points in their conference. And I feel like it's all about perspective. We talk about, they dropped Game 1 against the Jets, but will they do that again? And the problem is that, well, you look at 2 years ago, you look at the 2021 playoffs, they went down 2-0 in the second round to the Colorado Avalanche, and they were losing badly. Both games. I think one of the games was an absolute blowout, like 7-2 or something like that. And then before you knew it, Vegas won the next 4 straight, beat Colorado in 6, didn't even go to 7, but they were down 2-0 to begin that second round. And it looked like it was all over for them. Colorado certainly should have swept them, but no, it didn't happen. The Golden Knights came out and they won 4 straight and won that series before we even got to Game 7. So the Vegas Golden Knights are more than capable of winning this in, 6, maybe even 5, the next 4 straight. And I just don't really see how the Jets can beat them in this game. I definitely have Vegas over the Winnipeg Jets, but the Jets run to the Stanley Cup. It's cute, but the Golden Knights, they look too good to be taken down in the first round at a minimum. I will say though they did have their ups and downs. You and I went to a Golden Knights game earlier this year against the Kings, and boy, did the Kings make them look like a bunch of fools.
Killed them. Yeah,
Killed them.
What was it, 4-0, 4-1?
It was a blowout. It was certainly a blowout. Vegas looked unmotivated, and maybe it was just a bad day. Maybe the team was hungover or something. It is Vegas after all. But at the end of the day, the Golden Knights did finish the most points in the Western Conference to end the season. So I think it's hard to bet against them. So I'm taking Vegas.
Definitely agree. Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see. I think they've had some rough patches, but I think a good thing that they've had is they've been able to stay healthy, unlike a lot of other teams in this playoff. So, yeah, I mean, Jack Eichel, what's his first playoff experience now? And, they got the guy for a reason. He's a great player. So is most of their roster. I mean, they're an all-star level team, and so we'll have to see. And, yeah.
So who do you got winning this game? I don't think I asked.
Oh, yeah, I got Vegas in – I'll take them in 5.
Okay, Vegas over Winnipeg. All right, and then we're going to go back to the Eastern Conference for the last time in this video. We have the Jets – not the fucking Jets, the Jersey Devils, my bad. The Jersey Devils and the New York Rangers. And listen, dude, usually when you bet on sports games, you bet what's the over-under for the goals or – the penalties, right? Man, my question is, what is the over-under for arrests made in the crowd this series? Because Jersey and New York, they hate each other. It's going to be a bloodbath, not on the ice, but in the seats. You know what I'm saying? So I think
Right.
it's gonna be really entertaining to watch for that reason alone. I can't even remember the last. I don't think the Jersey Devils and the New York Rangers have played each other in the playoffs. In the time that I've been watching hockey, I think this is the first. So it's going to be really interesting to see. I think the Rangers won today. Yes, they did. I don't know by how much. I think it was a couple of goals. So it was a little convincing. But the Rangers, they had a fantastic run last year in the playoffs until obviously they ran into the Lightning, which was unfortunate for them because that was just a powerhouse you couldn't really control. But the Rangers are definitely, in my opinion, a team to eye down as a Stanley Cup contender this year. They've got what it takes. I really do believe that. But can they get past their state line rival there over down in Jersey? It's just gonna have to play the waiting game and see what happens. But what's your take on this?
Yeah, I think this could, have the capacity to be the most entertaining, exciting series in, the first round because, like you said, the rivalry, these teams hate each other ever since Brodeur and Messier, and probably even before that. Um, and yeah, it was a 5-1 finish in game one with the Rangers prevailing, which, I'm not too surprised about. I think this is going to be a close series nonetheless, though. I mean, you have two very strong teams from a goal scoring perspective, right? You have for the Rangers, like Adam Fox, Mika Zibanejad, and then for the Devils, I mean, absolutely incredible season for Jack Hughes, and it's like his first time kind of like making it here. They also got Timo Meyer at the trade deadline, former Shark, and Igor Shesterkin. You never want to doubt that guy. He won the Vezina, and I think the New York last year, like you said, could have been a Stanley Cup team. I mean, the Lightning gave them. They gave the Lightning a run for their money, but the Lightning, of course, better team overall last year. But not going to doubt New Jersey. They're a team that hasn't been here in a while, right? They haven't made the playoffs in at least a year or so.
It was
It's been
2018, and they went out in the first round of the Lightning that year. Yeah,
right, and it's a new team than it was then. They have Jesper Bratt. They have
totally.
uh,
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt, but they had Taylor Hall. Last time they made the playoffs, how many teams has that guy flip flopped across? In the league, and now he's sitting here as a Bruin, and
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, Adam Fox, Artemi Panarin, it's a great team for the Rangers. I have them winning in six. I think it's like you said, it's an anticipated matchup. I honestly, if the Devils won though, I wouldn't be surprised, just given the fact that they've had a great season, and they've definitely proved a lot of people wrong. So they're probably going to prove me wrong too. But the Rangers are a great season though. It's definitely been hyped up. And it's also a close matchup, two teams that play each other quite a bit. But I think from like a forward standpoint, not necessarily defense, because they have Igor in net. I mean, he can do a lot of it himself, but an offensive standpoint, I mean, Zibanejad, Fox, those guys alone are going to be huge X factors in this series. So yeah, I got the Rangers winning in six.
fair enough, man. I think I have the Rangers winning in six or five as well. I don't think
I
New
don't think
Jersey has what it takes yet to take down a powerhouse team like the Rangers. I really believe that the Rangers are a powerhouse team. They really proved themselves last year as a young, just force. They're stubborn. They won't be taken down easy. And so now that they've had that added experience, they're definitely gonna be a team that's gonna be tough to take down. Shifting over now to our last matchup of the first round, we have the Oilers and the Kings, which I believe is a rematch of last year or even the year before that.
Yeah, last year was definitely a matchup. I think might have gone to seven. I don't remember. I don't think it was a first round or no, I think it was. I don't remember, but they did play each other last year. Um, and the
Yes,
Oilers
it
won.
was seven. Yeah, it was seven.
Yeah, and the Oilers won. I remember, and you know, it's really hard to doubt Connor McDavid. It's he's one of those guys that it's like he's so good he can lead a team by himself. He also has a great team around him, Nugent Hopkins and Drysaitel. But he's been taken down before. Obviously, he's never won a Stanley Cup, so I'm not gonna doubt the Kings for that reason. But the Oilers were the better team this year. I think the Kings are a very strong team. Anze Kopitar, Philip Denault. I mean, they've had a lot of star power, but I mean, Connor McDavid has had one of the best seasons of his career, if not the best. 153 points for uh, Connor McDavid, and I think the Oilers are just too good not to go down in the first round. I don't think they're a team that I necessarily have winning the Stanley Cup. And head to head this year, I checked, both teams won two, so they're very equal in terms of head to head matchups. It's going to be a close series. It's definitely not going to be one sided too far. And I think the Kings, a team that exceeded expectations. We saw them, mop the floor with Vegas in person. So that was definitely kind of proof that they're a great team. And the Oilers are a great team too. I think they're a little bit better. They also added, you got to remember Ekholm and Stuart Skinner, and in net. I mean, those guys have been very reliable. I mean, it's just been a team that in net they're strong. On defense, they're pretty strong. In the forward position, they're exceptionally strong with McDavid. And so, yeah, I guess we'll have to see. But I got the Oilers winning in six. It's going to be a great series, though. It's a rivalry. It's a rematch, but I think the depth of the Oilers is also another thing to keep in mind. But the Kings, great team in the regular season. I just don't think they're quite there yet. They were a few points behind the Oilers, and they split the head-to-head matchup. So keep that in mind too. I think it's pretty equal, but I got the Oilers with the edge.
You talk about how evenly matched it was in the regular season. Boy, look at that first match they had last night. Edmonton was 16 seconds away from winning that game. LA ties it up in dramatic fashion and then takes the win in overtime, but not before Edmonton had a goal that was called back. I don't remember why it was called back, but it was called back. So you're definitely right. It's completely evenly matched between these two teams. There's a reason it went 7 last year, and I think it's definitely going 7 again this year. And I think the same winner comes on top, and that is Edmonton. And I'll tell you why. Okay, so there's these cool social media platforms. It's called like Twitter and Instagram and whatnot. And on these specific platforms, there's a lot of 13, 14, 12-year-olds, whatnot, that love to just blast these corporate accounts like the NHL and ESPN NHL and NBC, whatnot, that, anytime they post McDavid, it's, bro, why are you meat riding McDavid so hard, bro? Like, come on, man. Well, I'll tell you right now, I am very far from an Oilers supporter, very far from any connections to Edmonton as a whole. But I'll be the first guy to tell you, I am so in love with McDavid and the way he plays. Like, call me a meat rider, whatever you want. I'm all aboard the McJesus train, dude. Last season, I specifically went to a Edmonton Lightning game in Tampa for the sole reason of wanting to see McDavid play in person. And sure enough, that mofo put up 2 goals on us. I think we still beat him anyway, but, I mean, it was like, I wasn't even mad when he scored. I was just like, Jesus, man, you can't ever doubt that guy. And so there's a reason, and you have Draisaitl as well. Man, it's a tough force to compete with. I think Edmonton wins this once again in 7, and only because they have Connor McJesus on the ice for them.
Yeah, and I mean, you combine that with like the combination of like the amazing scoring from that tandem, and then also like the Kings' goaltending and defense has not been that good, as of late. So it's like that kind of combined. I feel like the Oilers are going to put up a lot of goals in this series. They're going to win it, and I mean, yeah, it's been close, but I also think you take a lot of matchups that happened a lot earlier in the year, and these teams have not changed as much as some of the other ones on the board here, but they've changed, and I think the Oilers just have the edge. And like, I've never seen McDavid in person. I want to someday. He is incredible. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, no, he's definitely. I know it's very early to talk about it, but I think when all is said and done, there's a very real possibility he'll be up there, if not past the greatest of all time, which is Wayne Gretzky. And it's ironic because they played on the same team. Either way, he hasn't won a cup yet. Gretzky, I believe, won multiple cups, so he's gonna have to get up there. For a lot of people, they look at championships over stats, but that's a conversation for a different day. Did you fill out that bracket I sent you, Casey? Did you fill out the NHL challenge? Now,
I did.
I know it's very, very early because we're in the first round. The first round just got underway, but you want to go ahead and leak your prediction for the final?
Yeah, so I don't know if all my picks were the same as tonight because I kind of was just going off of what
And
happened
I'm
in game
I'm
one.
right there with you. Yeah.
Yeah, but I did have Boston and Avalanche, and I had Boston winning in I think 6 or 7.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, a lot of people are taking the Boston Bruins this year because of obviously setting records with the amount of points they had.
How
Um,
about you? Yeah,
oh man! All right, so when I was filling out my bracket, I ran into a couple of unfamiliar matchups like Dallas, Minnesota. I don't follow these teams. I don't know who's better than the other.
yeah,
But for the game I watched, they seem pretty evenly matched. Excuse me. Um, So, I mean, I was just kind of going based off of, well, who had more points and whatnot, but at the same time, trying to keep my perfect undefeatedness going after the NFL playoffs. But I will say, when I filled out my bracket, I had Carolina in the final, and I had them defeating McDavid and the Oilers in 6 or 7. So, as of right now, I have Carolina over Edmonton. I think Edmonton, you look at them last year, they lost to Colorado. They got swept in the conference finals. So the Oilers are capable of a deep playoff run. They just are. They beat Calgary in 5 in the second round after getting past LA in 7. And so, when it comes to Edmonton and McDavid, you can't ever count them out. They have what it takes to make a deep run, just like they did last year. Just depends on who you run into. And I feel like from the very beginning of last year, it was just Colorado's year. They had the President's Trophy the year before, and then they dominated the regular season. Didn't win the President's Trophy, but you kind of knew that they were going to be really hard to take down to the playoffs, and sure enough, they won the whole thing. So with Edmonton this year, I think they have what it takes to make a deep playoff run, and especially have what it takes to get to the finals. However, you look at these Eastern Conference teams, who has been here for the last couple of years and who just hasn't been able to break past that barrier. And the one team that catches my eye is the Carolina Hurricanes. They just always run into a team that's just a little bit better than them and they get bested. When really the truth is that they're not a bad team at all and they do have what it takes. So they've been gaining experience slowly, and I think that they really can make a deep push here. As of right now, first round underway, just as of yesterday, I do have Carolina over Edmonton. But I will say, I'm looking at this bracket now, and if Boston beats the Panthers, which is looking likely, and the Lightning beat the Leafs, which who knows after tonight, that would mean that the Lightning would have to play the Bruins in the second round. And
yeah.
the second round is usually the kryptonite of a President's Trophy winner. So I'm not saying nothing. But if that does happen, if we get a Lightning Bruins second round, I do think we can very realistically see a Carolina versus Tampa Bay Eastern Conference final. And I'm not going to give a prediction if that were to happen hypothetically, but I think Carolina could probably win that. So that's all I got.
That's what. Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, yeah, I think we all have realistic picks here. I mean, obviously puck luck is a thing. I feel like there's always
Oh,
kind of
absolutely.
crazy.
I think I think the NHL is probably the hardest sport to predict when it comes to playoffs. So
Yeah, lack of consistency. So yeah, we'll have to see what happens. But until then, I mean, I like our picks and should be good. We'll have to see. We'll have to see if you get a perfect bracket again, which you
nah,
could.
that's
So
not gonna happen because almost nobody gets a perfect bracket in hockey. But regardless, I think that's going to do it for this first round preview. Appreciate everybody for watching the video, and I'm happy to be back with my boy here, Casey, and we'll be catching you along the way. We'll make a second round conference final, Stanley Cup final. We'll be there for you, so can't wait to, give our thoughts along the way.
sounds good. Thank you guys so much, and looking forward to the next couple of rounds.
Yes, sir. All right, have a good rest of your day, everybody. Peace out.